A very warm welcome to you all to the one-on-one set. In the studio tonight, we have with us Krishna Pentayah as guest. He is the founder of the Sauve la Nature NGO. Krishna is also an engineer and the author of the book titled Langage l'univers. Tonight, during this episode of One on One, Krishna is going to share with us more about his projects. Krishna, thank you so much for joining us in the studio of the MBC.
Thank you for having me, Koyal.
Krishna, so you are the founder of the Sauve la Nature NGO, which advocates for environmental conservation. So I'm very curious to hear about the mission and vision that guide this organization and what truly inspired you to start this journey.
So it starts all when I was around 8 years old, and that's where the root of it came. I will narrate you a little story, which many of my close ones know. So when I was 8 years old, there was this tree in my yard, which was a neem tree. And I was so close to this tree, I named her Radha because for me, she was one of my closest friends. We used to play mama, papa, father, mother, and we used to share tea together. I used to talk to the tree. And for me, the tree had a deep connection, a deep meaning. And there was one day when some people were mad because the trees, she was very grown up and it would like drop many leaves everywhere and people wanted to cut it down. Then there was one day when the tree cutter came and they wanted to cut the tree. Then I saw this and I immediately rushed to the tree. Instead of going against the tree cutters or my parents, I went and hugged the tree. Back then, I was a very good climber, like a little monkey. I still am, but back then I climbed the tree and hugged it really deeply and strongly. None of my parents could climb, thank God, by that time. But then I hugged the tree and tried to prevent anyone from coming close to it. Because for me, this tree had really deep significance and a deep connection, which at that time my parents didn't know. Then, from this act of compassion, they were shocked themselves.
Yeah.
And even the tree cutter didn't want to cut my rada, the neem tree. So that this is where it all started. So La Nature has as philosophy not really to go against in a brutal way, in a brutal manner, against authorities trying to build, kinds of laws or kind of systems going against nature. We go against the authorities in a different way through compassion, through hugging this cause of us. So Sauve la Nature has as philosophy to share the compassion, the love that we have for nature through several different projects, through several different actions. Namely, one of our main pillars is through the decolonization and indigenization of the climate narrative. So our main mission is to just like the love, the compassion that I have for Radha, my tree, who is still very proudly standing, one of our main goals is to connect humans with themselves because many humans are now kind of lost and disconnected with themselves, their inner being, and then to connect this human with other humans and then the group of humans back to Mother Nature. So it is really something which is in terms of a decolonized way of thinking, very indigenous way of thinking, back to the roots, back to where we came from. So we have different projects which I might talk later.
So in a way, Sauve la Nature aims to make human be more respectful towards the nature, right?
Yes.
But connecting with communities, especially the younger generation, can be challenging when it comes to environmental conservation. So, how has Sauve la Nature managed to engage these groups effectively? I mean, what approaches you found to be most useful?
Well, to be honest, we have an executive committee which I'm really proud of. We're standing nearly for around 4 years now, and we are all youngsters. We are multidisciplinary. We have people who will become lawyers, people who will become scientists, economists. So this executive committee is so strong and so motivated that they are the driving force of Sauve la Nature. And they managed to pull out, till now, we've managed to pull out around 60,000 youngsters who are engaged in
Oh,
Sovlanatier
there's a lot.
different projects. And really, we do not do a lot to engage youngsters because I think now youngsters are beginning to understand the criticality of the problem, and now they're engaging themselves through different initiatives that happen not just in Sovlanatier but around Mauritius and around the world.
And looking back at the work that the Natia has done, are there any particular projects or moments that stand out as a significant success for you all?
So there's this project, the National Multidisciplinary Mangrove Regeneration Project, which Sovlanatier members have worked so hard for this. It's a project which arose from a tragedy which hit our little island, the oil spill disaster. After the oil spill disaster, we the youth came up with the regeneration of mangrove project. So the project involves a multidisciplinary aspect where we engage students in terms of holistic education with regards to mangroves, but also youngsters who are in their specific domains and fields. For instance, we have PhD students working with us in the mangrove regeneration. It's not just about planting mangrove, but it is also about doing research on how much carbon we're offsetting, what different ecosystem we are fostering, and how we're protecting the coasts. But we're also working with communities because whenever we have environmental projects, it is essential not to forget the community that surrounds it because nature is climate justice. We can't have climate justice without social justice. So we've been working with locals and fishermen of Trou de Douce and women also who kept looking after our nurseries, but they also built a connection with the mangroves that we are planting there. Because at the end of the day, the project, after we've completed the project, we won't really be there to look after the baby mangroves. Those are the communities who have to foster this connection because they are the continuity of this region of mangrove. And I'm very honored to announce you that we'll soon be going to Taiwan because we've been nominated for the International Youth
Yeah,
Innovation
yes.
Challenge. And this is really fascinating because the mangrove project started really even before the pandemic hit. There are so many people working hard for this. And we are the first Mauritians actually going and being nominated for this challenge.
It feels great to be recognized, right? To be
Yes.
acknowledged for the work that you've done. But Krishna, I'm sure that the journey is not all rosy. There have been some challenges to be able to make some impactful, you know, to create a positive impact in the society. So, what are the challenges that Natia has faced, and how did you try to overcome them?
So one of the main challenges is in terms of post-colonial systems that still exists, not just in Mauritius, but in many small island developing states, in many Creole islands, in many colonized islands. So what I mean by that is colonization impacted us not just physically, not just materialistically, but we were colonized mentally, emotionally, also spiritually, because many of us are no longer practicing our spiritual connection with nature just because colonization happened. So the colonization demonized and ridiculized our practices. For instance, hugging a tree was considered very normal before in ancient India because we have that connection with trees and mental health connection, how earthing happened. But now hugging a tree is considered ridicule or people will laugh at it because we're still colonized in our mental, in our mindsets. So this type of colonization is still very much present in a lot of systems that is present in a lot of institutions. So whenever we come forward with nature-based solutions projects or environmental projects, those kind of colonization mindsets or colonized institutions, still colonized, they are the main obstacles. So how do we go forward? How do we overcome those obstacles? So we have the pillar of Sovlanatier in terms of the decolonization and indigenization. It means that we're bringing back the lost connection that we had with nature pre-colonization, because colonization just did not just happen in terms of language in terms of our spirituality, but really profoundly in our soul. So we have the social linguistic department who are working a lot in terms of bringing this conversation forward, not just in Mauritius, but also internationally. Recently, I've been to Antigua to represent Mauritius for the SIDS 4 International Conference, and this conversation was very present there as well. So it is essential to have this kind of decolonization discussion, especially for the climate during the climate narratives.
How has Sauve la Nature, collaborated with other organizations, both locally and internationally then?
So we are very grateful to have various relationships, diplomatic relationships, bilateral relationships with countries like Japan, some other small island developing states like Barbados, Antigua. We've been building those kind of relationships. I think it all brings back to the compassionate, the love that we have for nature, the hugging of my Rada, because the executive committee, each one of us have that capacity of having demonstrating love for Mother Nature. So this is the driving force which helped us to collaborate with other organizations. And it is essential to collaborate because many youngsters that I've came across, they tell me that, okay, we have our ideologies, and if you don't follow our ideologies, if you don't match our philosophies, we won't collaborate at all. But we have to understand in the world we're living, we have different mindset, different ways of thinking. But those different ways of thinking can be something which is very beautiful. Like, for instance, we have a garden. In the garden, we can have a rose, a sunflower, we can have a marga, different kinds of flowers. This is what makes the beauty of the garden. So we have to accept our differences and collaborate together because this planet is not just for me, for you. This planet is for all of us.
Wonderful, Krishna. We've talked, about Sauve la Nature, but you've also actually written a book titled Langage l'univers. So talk to us about that book, which is actually quite unique, as it's written in Creole Mauricien and it focuses on science. So what pushed you to write about this book and to approach science in this way?
So now we're going into one of my favorite worlds, which is the literary world, the poetic world, the dreamy world, one where we can dream, we can float, we can imagine. Because what is a world without someone dreaming in it? People are often forgetting to dream because they think they don't have time to dream. They're working so hard, but forgetting to dream. So, Langage Univers came out from. Actually, I was inspired by Les Immortels de France, the Immortals. In the Middle Ages, the French language was considered a low language, a language which was spoken by the low class society compared to Latin, which was considered to be high language, the language, la langue des dieux, la langue des écrivains, la langue des sciences et des arts. So this was called a diglossia, which my friend Oliver Lacaze is doing currently a PhD on it. And this diglossia is still exists in Mauritius with regards to the Creole language, with regards to the French language, whereby the Creole language is considered a language which is not to be spoken, it's not a professional language. It's not considered to be a delicate, a beautiful language. But the French language was like that. So when the Cardinal Richelieu founded l'Académie Française around 1634, 1635, he nominated immortals. Immortals were artists, scientists, and authors. For instance, famous authors like Voltaire, Montesquieu, Victor Hugo, or even scientists like Louis Pasteur, Louis de Broglie, and yes, Louis de Broglie, and famous
Yeah.
scientists. So they had as goal to immortalize the French language, to purify the language, to bring the language at the level of to be accepted by one and everyone. So back then, the French language was considered a low-class language. Now it is considered one of the most beautiful language that we have. And Descartes himself, one of the famous philosophers and scientists, said that he started to write his scientific analysis in French to be understood by everyone, by the women and by the children as well, because at that time, women and children were very much uneducated in terms of language. They didn't know about Latin language, they spoke French language. So Langage Univers was really inspired from the Immortal of France.
So, what are the key topics that you've covered in this book, and when did you start writing it?
So one of the most interesting thing is that the book is not just scientific. Well, there are also some poetic and philosophic aspect that I bring to it. Um, when I traveled, I was around 13 years old. I was in Germany, and there was the first time I saw snow at that time. And I will read a little bit
Yeah,
from the book for you to
yeah,
get an idea. So when I first saw snow, this is what struck my mind, and I actually wrote it in a journal back then. Depuis bien petit, petit, exta kyrie. Mochi tout les temps envie qu'on tout, c'est exactement qui faire sa livre-là exister. Sa livre-là exister pour permettre toi qu'on une partie minime de tout. Mochi pose moi-même une question, comique pour certains, mais bien important pour les autres, quand Mochi n'a 13 ans, dans l'Allemagne. Qui langage sa boule lanaise là causé? Comment nous capables comprendre lui pour ce qu'il y était? Qui était ça? Malgré que beaucoup de monde participe comprend moi, moi me j'ai envie de comprendre tout. Après dans mon vie, me fin réaliser que sa boule lanaise là, est cause un langage universel, langage l'univers. Pareil comment tout objet vivant ou non vivant dans nos planètes et que nous l'univers. Pour moi, Dimoun est que la nature est une seule, la nature est une expression de l'univers. Pour nous comprendre l'univers, nous devons comprendre ce langage, mathématiques et sciences. Alors comment est-ce qu'il nous capable de comprendre sa boule lanaise là, qui me supposé trouver comme au Getli, qui sa boule lanaise là peut communiquer en moi. This is inspired from Galileo Galilei,
okay.
who said that to understand the universe, you must understand the language which isn't in which it's written, and it's the language of science and mathematics.
Great. Krishna, so you're also actually involved in art, right?
Yes.
You've collaborated with House of Digital Art. So, what role does art play in our society for you?
Um, Especially in the Mauritian society, for me, art is really essential because there's this book which one of my greatest friends, Astrid Daly, recommended me. It's called Otium, where in ancient Greece, people were encouraged just to have some times with themselves, to think, to cultivate their minds, to cultivate their souls in terms of culture and arts, because this helped them to become better human beings. So for Mauritius, what does it mean? What is the importance of art in the Mauritian society? Art helps us to cultivate our inner beings. It helps us to become more conscientious towards what's happening around us, more sensitive towards what's happening, what are the problems we're dealing with. So we do have intellectual quotient. We do have the 9 types of intelligences by Howard Gardner, logical intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence. But what about our collective consciousness intelligence as human beings? And Mauritius now, we're soon to be headed towards a period of our own enlightenment era. Like France had la période de lumière, Mauritians always want to know more now.
Yeah,
Our identity, who we are, our language, the beauty of
the
it.
quest for knowledge, right?
Yes. So it is essential to have the aspect of art and culture to elevate our society, not just the individual, but collectively the society towards this future age of Mauritian enlightenment.
We've also noticed that the research we've made that you share many spiritual knowledge, about the videos you post and the new tank you founded. So, how do you think spirituality is essential for the youth nowadays?
Many youngsters often ask me how I found my purpose or what's the direction, how do I compass myself, what's the compass I follow um, with regards to all the things that we do. Um, to be honest, I'm still looking for the completeness of a purpose, and I think it's absolutely fine to still be looking for the completeness of a purpose. I know it to a certain degree, but not fully. Spirituality really helped me to be able to find a sense of direction, to find a sense of selflessness, to be able to share this compassion that I have within me with others. You know, nowadays the youngsters is very at times self-absorbed. They're very self-centered also through social media, through comparative. They're going to compare why am I like this, why they are like this. And we've become so materialistic nowadays. And I'm going to be very honest, the society is becoming very sad. The youngsters nowadays, we are being depressed. We have very a depressed society where the youth in itself having a decline in mental
Mhm.
health. So I think spirituality is here. It's not about religion, it's about spirituality, something which is really innate in human beings, the soul. Spirituality is here to try to bring back the lost joy, to try to find joy in the smallest of things, in a tree, in a breeze, in helping
To find
others.
stillness as well.
Exactly, to find stillness, to find balance, to ground ourselves. And there are many people who say that the more intelligent you are, the less happy you are, the more sad you become. I completely disagree with this because I know a lot of intelligent people I met who are really intelligent but also very spiritual, and they're very joyous. They've managed to find joy and find the balance within them. So spirituality for the youth is essential to be able to make them bring back that happiness, bring back that joy, and to understand that there's always something bigger than us.
We are actually drawing towards the end of this episode, but before that, Krishna, what drives your passion for environmental advocacy, science, and artistic expression? And do you have any other projects?
I believe my parents do really drive this because I don't know how my father, my mother did this, but they really got out of their familial loops because both of them were born in really vulnerable, poor families. My father worked a lot in the sugarcane fields when he was young, and now he's working at a really prestigious position, even my mother as well. And my sister is always here for me, always supportive. I think this is the driving force. Family. It is essential to understand that not all families also are supportive, and some people encounter obstacles within their families. But we have to, for future families that we will be creating, it is essential to break that generational
Yeah.
thing and to become an emanation of love. So it is essential to share that compassion, not just to keep it for ourselves. And one advice I would give to youngsters who want to create changes is that do not let our own self down. Never let ourselves down. We have to be very disciplined, yes, but it is essential to understand that the cultivation of compassion begins within us. The self love that we have to cultivate is very important. So, for instance, when we have the way we treat others with kindness, we have to treat ourselves with the same kindness because it all starts within so that we can give without.
Thank you, Krishna, for these wise words. It was a delight to have you on the show tonight, and I hope our audience as well have enjoyed this insightful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Dear viewers, we have now come to the end of this episode. Thank you for your time. We hope to catch you next week at the same time, same channel. Have a great evening.